Insurance fraud in the UK has hit epidemic levels. It's costing us over £2 billion every year. That's almost £6 million every day. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injuries, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing, and every year it's adding over £50 to your insurance bill. But insurers are fighting back, exposing 15 fake claims every hour. Armed with covert surveillance systems,
that's a subject out the vehicle,
sophisticated data analysis techniques, and a highly skilled, dedicated police unit.
Police, stay where you are!
They're catching the criminals red-handed.
Just don't lie to us.
All those con men, scammers, and cheats on the fiddle are now caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Coming up, surveillance footage scuppers and HGV drivers claim for a truckload of compensation.
Without the surveillance, we would have faced a claim into the many hundreds of thousands of pounds, and so it would have provided Mr. Doyle with a lottery win in compensation.
A bone-crunching fall.
You can feel every single hit as he's falling down the stairs. It was pretty harrowing to watch.
And door-to-door inquiries, IFED style.
It's police, can you open up? We will put the door in.
When it comes to catching someone out, there's nothing like a bit of damning video evidence, which is exactly what proved to be the undoing of HGV driver Lee Doyle after he grossly exaggerated a personal injury claim.
Mr. Doyle alleged that his accident happened when he was walking across his employer's yard and tripped over and fell and banged his lower back on a raised curbstone.
Injuries to the spine can be very serious, and in severe cases can leave victims with numerous ongoing problems. When the insurance company received Lee Doyle's claim, it appeared that he was suffering from every back complaint in the book.
The injuries that he was left with was a very stiff lower back. He had sciatic-type symptoms with dead legs that meant he couldn't walk very far. Whenever he did walk, he had to use a walking stick that he couldn't bend or lift or carry. And in particular, he couldn't sit still for very long periods, which obviously affected his job as an HGV driver.
With a list of complaints as long as that, you'd think that the doctor would be able to diagnose the problem in a heartbeat. But the specialist who examined Mr. Doyle was left scratching his head.
Unfortunately for Mr. Doyle, the orthopaedic surgeon couldn't find any reason for the nature of the injuries that he said he was suffering from. And because of that, he suggested referral on to a pain management consultant.
Unsurprisingly, the combination of Lee Doyle's supposed symptoms and an orthopaedic consultant that couldn't find anything wrong with him led the insurance company to suspect foul play. So they referred the case to their solicitors, BLM.
We had real concerns about Mr. Doyle's claim, simply because it didn't add up. Somebody who'd had such a very straightforward accident of tripping and falling, Mr. Doyle said that he was significantly disabled. For example, he couldn't walk more than 25 yards. He needed a walking stick to get about. And when his own expert couldn't find an explanation for the symptoms he was describing, we thought it merited further investigation.
With Lee Doyle claiming his injuries were so severe he could no longer continue working as a lorry driver, he wanted his employer's insurers to cough up some cash.
He'd calculated his loss of earnings at £55,000. There were other incidental losses, additional help that he'd had around the home for DIY and gardening. The important factor for us was that Mr. Doyle said he would find it impossible to go back to his earlier job, and so his future loss of earnings could well have been into the hundreds of thousands of pounds.
But his claim for lost income was just the beginning, as Lee Doyle had a list of costs that was even longer than his string of injuries, taking the total claim to around £500,000.
He also claimed for travel expenses to various medical appointments, and strangely even to his nan's house, because he said that he couldn't shower at home, so had to go to her house to shower. He claimed for the additional care and assistance that his partner had provided him in getting him up out of bed in the morning and helping him dress in the morning. He'd claimed for additional help that he'd had looking after his fish. Mr. Doyle's case was rather extreme in that there were some very strange items of claim.
Faced with a potentially huge payout, but still not convinced that this was a legitimate claim, BLM arranged for Mr. Doyle to see a pain management consultant and a neurologist. But that's not all they did.
Because of the concerns that we had about the claim generally, we arranged for covert surveillance to be undertaken. The difficulty with that is that sometimes the surveillance operatives can be sitting there and not see anything at all. And so, because we'd arranged medical appointments, we knew where Mr. Doyle would be on a particular day at a particular time.
With the injuries that Lee Doyle was claiming to be suffering from, BLM were expecting the footage to show a man unsteady on his feet and who needed help to perform even the most basic movements. And as he arrived for and left his medical appointments, that's precisely what they did see. Case closed? Not quite.
Some of the surveillance we obtained of Mr. Doyle, you wouldn't believe that it was the same person that you read about in the medical reports. We're able to watch him going into a medical assessment, walking in a very disabled manner with a walking stick, presenting himself in chronic pain. When we eventually got the medical report back, he had told the expert that he had quite serious physical difficulties. What we saw Mr. Doyle do later in the day was simply amazing. What he'd said on paper, where he couldn't walk for more than 25 yards without a walking stick, we were able to disprove that, showing that he was walking his dog without any difficulty for over an hour. He said that he couldn't bend at the waist and lift things off the floor, but surveillance footage showed that he was lifting without any real difficulty at all.
But the most shocking footage was captured just 4 hours after Doyle had hobbled his way into a medical examination. In it, we see him hoisting heavy concrete slabs above his head onto a garage roof. Steady on now, Lee. Mind your back, son.
His evidence was that he couldn't drive, yet he was able to drive his own 4x4 vehicle without any apparent discomfort at all. So everything that we were being told simply wasn't borne out by the surveillance footage that we were presented with.
The video evidence proved beyond doubt that Lee Doyle was grossly over-exaggerating his claim, happy to play the role of the weak and wounded in order to receive a bumper payout. But it was a performance that BLM weren't buying.
Once we had collated all of the surveillance evidence and we'd had the opportunity of having Mr. Doyle examined by our experts, we were waiting for court proceedings to be issued. That was really the last chance that Mr. Doyle had to come clean. We didn't know whether he would be honest in his presentation and say that he has tried to work, that he does have good days or bad days, that he is capable of doing some physical activity. When proceedings were eventually issued, he maintained that he was chronically disabled, that he hadn't worked since the date of the accident. It was unlikely he was ever going to be able to go back to his former job. And the claim that he presented in financial terms was very significant, into the hundreds of thousands of pounds. Our only response to that had to be that we disclosed all of our medical evidence and all of our surveillance evidence and pointed out that he'd been caught out.
Since his accident, Mr. Doyle had claimed around £25,000 in disability benefits. So, upon hearing about the exaggeration of his claim, the Department of Work and Pensions had a few questions of their own.
A separate investigation was undertaken by the Department for Work and Pensions through their fraud unit. We understand that Mr. Doyle's benefits were stopped immediately when the investigation was started.
Doyle was ordered to repay almost £25,000, but bogus disability benefits weren't the only thing he had taken away from him.
We understand that he tried to tender his resignation. We were informed by the employer that his resignation wasn't accepted, and so we understand that a process of gross misconduct was pursued and that eventually Mr. Doyle was dismissed.
BLM's investigations had scuppered what could have been a fraudulent claim in the region of £500,000.
Without the surveillance, we think we would have faced a claim into the many hundreds of thousands of pounds, and so it would have provided Mr. Doyle with a lottery win in compensation.
Instead, Lee Doyle was offered and accepted a £10,000 settlement, which is what BLM felt was the honest portion of his claim. But that didn't even cover all of his legal costs. He was now out of pocket and unemployed. However, if this case had been resolved just a year later, then things could have ended much more seriously.
I think Mr. Doyle is a very fortunate man for getting the level of compensation that we offered. Times have changed, thankfully, since Mr. Doyle put his claim in, and the way of the law now, we wouldn't actually be making any offers at all. In fact, we'd be looking to pursue Mr. Doyle for contempt of court, and which may lead to a prison term.
Still to come, A nasty tumble. But did he slip or did he trip?
Obviously, it's very sad when someone gets hurt, but is he entitled to make a claim?
And IFED treat another suspected fraudster to one of their special wake-up calls.
Please open up.
What they're going to do is they're going to come round with the entry team and gain entry that way. Not the way we like to do it, but it's leaving us no option.
In January 2012, the police joined the fight against insurance fraud by forming an elite squad known as IFED, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department.
IFED is a dedicated team that deals with insurance fraud. Whatever insurance policy there is out there, we investigate it.
There is a dedicated 40-strong unit that work 24/7 hunting down insurance fraudsters.
IFED has made over 450 arrests and saved millions of pounds in fraudulent insurance claims, money which ultimately goes back in our pockets. From now on, fraudsters need to watch their backs.
We are out there in numbers. You might get a nasty knock on your door in the morning if you commit this type of fraud.
Police, don't move, stay where you are.
With almost £400 million a year being lost through car insurance fraud, it's something that the officers of IFED have found themselves dealing with on a regular basis. And one of the biggest problems they encounter are crashes that have been instigated with the sole intention of making money.
Crash for cash involves staged or induced accidents. It's generally organised by people that know each other, and a typical example would be what's known as a slam-on, where a vehicle will slam its brakes on with the sole purpose of causing the vehicle behind to drive into it and then make a claim as a result of that accident.
During their first year of operation, IFED dealt with a crash for cash case, which hit the headlines.
This case involves two families from the Birkenhead area in Liverpool who reported that they're involved in a road accident in the Wirral area in March 2011.
It all seems fairly standard so far. So what was the problem?
The claim involved a road accident at a set of traffic lights where a BMW and a Rover were said to be in a collision. Within these two vehicles were 7 occupants that belonged to 2 separate families. And as a result of the accident, all members then submitted claims for personal injury, damage to the vehicles and vehicle recovery costs. And all told, those claims totalled £77,000.
At first glance, this was a classic shunt between 2 cars at the lights. But as the insurance company began to process the claims, it became clear that this was anything but an ordinary accident.
It wasn't so much the value of the claim that raised the alarm, it was the inconsistency in some of the detail provided by the claimants to the insurers that caused them to make a referral to IFED for further investigation.
By the time the case was handed over to IFED, forensic engineers had established that the damage to the cars didn't match up to the version of events on the claim form. And as if that wasn't dodgy enough, the insurance company had also discovered that members of the 2 families already knew each other and were friends on a social networking site.
This was clearly pre-planned and organised on a large scale. The value of the claims is £77,000, so that shows the level of planning and work that went into this crime.
After some investigations of their own, it wasn't long before IFED made their move.
IFED sent a team of detectives up to the Birkenhead area and effected the arrest of all 7 suspects. They were all charged and sent to court, where they were convicted of fraud offences. So the main offenders, Kenneth Nash and Darren Gallimore, both received custodial sentences 12 months each in prison.
Nash, Gallimore and their accomplices thought they could pull the wool over the insurance company's eyes and pocket a small fortune in the process. But they were sorely mistaken.
It should send out the message: if you don't want to get arrested, if you don't want to go to prison, if you don't want to get a criminal record, then don't commit insurance fraud.
Crash for cash doesn't just affect insurance companies though. One tactic that fraudsters use is to hire cars, crash them, and then cash in on personal injury claims. Someone who knows all too well what impact this type of crime can have is Tony Moore, who owns and runs a car rental company.
The effect on these cash for crash accidents to our company from a financial point of view are immense. Obviously, it just pumps up the insurance. Pumping up insurance means we have to put our prices up, which obviously affects our business. 2 years ago, we have over £200,000 worth of claims. That obviously has a knock-on effect on our premium the following year. It's immense.
Tony has first-hand experience of how a scam like Crash for Cash can hit a business's books. But as an employer, he also knows there's a greater cost to these crimes.
Additionally to that, if ever the insurance companies turn around and said, look, you know, we're not insuring you, then we shut the doors and we all go home, and I've got 46 people made redundant, all caused by somebody trying to rip you off cash for crash.
For now, Tony's business is managing to survive, but the threat of Crash for Cash is a serious concern.
It's not, as people think, a victimless, it's just money. It isn't money, it's people's lives.
With the likes of IFED clamping down and fighting back against those who see car insurance as a way to make a fast buck, Tony has some words of warning.
The message to those people out there that want to do this is, if we get a sniff of it, we'll go all the way to try and prove it. And if we prove it, we won't just say, no, we're not paying you. We will push and push and push for a prosecution. And the courts are starting to take it serious now, and we're talking now incarceration.
As Tony rightly says, this is now a crime with serious consequences. The good news is that the likes of you and I are starting to benefit from the work of units like IFED, because in 2013, the money saved from Crash for Cash scams reduced car insurance premiums by 12%. Although as far as IFED's concerned, they're only just getting started.
The Insurance Fraud Bureau estimates that the cost to the insurance industry is £392 million per year from Crash for Cash scams. So I mean, that's clearly a huge amount of money, and it is an area that we're putting a lot of resources into tackling. And I'd like to think that with the results that we're getting and the impact we're making, that we're well on the way to targeting this type of criminality. And in the future, I'd like to think it will drop.
Just like lightning, you never know when disaster might strike. But thanks to the boom of personal injury claims, some accidents can have a silver lining in the form of a cash payout. In 2013, public transport operator First Group dealt with a claim from a gentleman who was making his way down the stairs at one of their train stations, when suddenly everything went horribly wrong.
When you come across claims like this, the first thing you normally think of when you see the injury is that's going to hurt, and seeing the footage just hammers that home. It's never nice to see anyone get injured in any way, and although you don't know what injuries he sustained, you can feel every single hit as he's falling down the stairs. It's not nice, and I do feel sorry for the gentleman concerned.
Thankfully, there were a number of people on hand to help the man out, although it was later discovered that the fall was every bit as bad as it looked.
The injuries sustained were quite nasty. He's got some minor bruising, but his main injury is actually a fracture to his knee, and that has got to hurt. It goes into the knee joint. It's very painful to walk on after, but at the time, yeah, he must have been in excruciating pain.
Even though it was a genuine accident, it wasn't long before First Group received a claim from the man's solicitors.
This gentleman alleged that he'd slipped when he'd got to the halfway point coming down the stairs. People don't just tend to slip on nothing, so he's assuming that therefore it was our fault. We caused him to fall down the stairs, therefore he's entitled to compensation for his rather nasty injuries.
If First Group were at fault, then the kind of payout that the man could have been looking at for injuries as severe as this certainly wasn't an amount to be sniffed at.
Overall, this claim was probably worth in the region of £50,000 for his compensation for his injuries, any potential loss of earnings claim and the legal fees that would have ensued.
So, we have an accident that definitely happened, serious injuries that were sustained, and a claim for around £50,000 compensation. It all sounds fairly standard, but before companies like First Group get out the checkbook, they want to be certain that the blame lies with them first. And that's where CCTV can be an invaluable source of evidence.
I actually don't think that people realise just how much CCTV footage there is at a railway station, and they give very good coverage of the area. People just don't even know they're there.
In this case, there was a CCTV camera in prime position at the top of the stairs, so First Group had a bird's eye view of exactly what happened.
When we receive claims like this, what we're going to look at when we view the footage is, did anyone else have a particular problem walking along that passage of stairways? What ideally you're looking for is people walking down with no problems at all, which would suggest there wasn't a slip hazard, because we just don't know what this gentleman had slipped on.
But when First Group viewed the footage, there didn't appear to be any evidence of a slipping hazard, or indeed any hazard at all.
One of the key points you'll notice from the actual CCTV evidence is the small child actually joyfully skipping down the stairs with no real problems at all, even stepping on the section where the gentleman allegedly slipped. Why then is this chap alleging that he slipped on a step that was previously okay for the people that preceded him? It's clear there was no slipping hazard on those steps, otherwise that small child who had taken a jump at it would have gone flying.
So if the man hadn't slipped like he claimed, then what really did happen?
He puts his left foot down, plants that quite normally. As he goes to step forward with his right foot, it gives way beneath him. This then causes him to stumble forward. At the same time, an unfortunate series of events, his trailing foot then catches the bag he's carrying, which flips him over, and he virtually somersaults down the stairs, striking probably every single step on the way down. And when I watched the footage, I did actually say ouch to myself every time he hit a step. It was, yeah, pretty harrowing to watch.
The severity of the fall had never been in doubt, but with no evidence to suggest that any blame lay with First Group, they didn't feel that the man was entitled to any compensation.
Once we reviewed the footage and realised that what the gentleman was saying was not actually true, we sent off the details of the CCTV to his solicitors and told them that we just weren't going to pay this claim out. They've subsequently closed their file and we've not heard from them since.
Were it not for the CCTV footage, this chap could have walked, or rather limped, all the way to the bank by claiming there was a slipping hazard that never existed. But situations like this are nothing new, and companies like First Group are finding themselves dealing with more and more people looking to pocket some easy money.
I think the practice from a legal point of view has become so easy to put a claim in on behalf of a person on the off chance that they will receive a payout does encourage some people to submit claims they otherwise wouldn't. Sometimes people know they've had an accident and it's no one's fault, but they're encouraged to try and make a claim for it anyway.
Although this case was dropped with no further action, there have been many instances where fraudulent claimers have been prosecuted and even sent to prison, which begs the question, is it really worth it?
Obviously, it's very sad when someone gets hurt, but is he entitled to make a claim? I think people are very hung up on the fact that if something happens to them, they're entitled to make a claim from someone, and accidents don't just happen. Well, they do. Not everything that happens to you, you can blame someone for. Sometimes it's just an accident.
It's early morning, and two teams of IFED officers have headed up north to carry out a dual raid in a suspected case of car insurance fraud. DC Andy Jackson is the officer in charge of one of the units.
What we plan to do today is we've got two warrants to attend simultaneously two addresses, and what they've done is they've both submitted claims for theft from their vehicles. The value of the thefts is in the region of $16,000. It's believed that they've done it on a number of occasions.
The suspected fraud is thought to have used quotes that were doctored to make them look like receipts, so IFED have got a pretty good idea what they need to find today.
We'll be looking for material which will assist the investigation. We'll be looking at probably computer evidence. If there's a suggestion that they've altered this documentation, they may very well scan that onto a computer.
Today, IFED are being assisted by local police units, so the first stop is the local station for a briefing and to get kitted up.
You just never know who you're going to be dealing with, people's reactions sometimes when they, get arrested, or police turn up at the address, people just react in different ways. So we're just going to make our way there now and see how we get on.
With everything set, the teams roll out.
Hello Mick, you all right? Look, we're literally going to be here in about a minute. Do you want us to go straight in? Yeah, we're in now. We'll go straight to the house. Cheers. All right, bye, mate. Bye.
After a final phone call with the other IFED team, Andy and the boys go in.
Hello, City Police, open up.
It's not unusual for people wanted by IFED to make a run for it. So, just in case today's suspect decides to do the old backdoor shuffle, local officers cover the exits. Although it looks as if the team may be too late.
It's police, can you open up? We will put the door in.
Word has come through that the suspect at the other raid has been arrested, but no one is able to get hold of the elusive homeowner who lives here. Although with crucial evidence to find, Andy and the team aren't leaving without it.
Right, it looks like that what they're going to do is they're going to come round with the entry team and we'll gain entry that way. Not the way we like to do it, but it's leaving us no option at this time. We've tried all numbers and all other means to get in touch with him, but we've been unsuccessful.
With the front door just moments away from being taken off its hinges, the suspect returns the team's phone call.
Yeah, it's DC Andy Jackson from City London Police. I understand you're on your way back to this address? Excellent, okay. All right, how far are you away? Lovely, all right, we'll see you when you get here and we'll explain all. Thank you, bye. Right, he's on his way, he's 5 minutes away. And then someone's just pulled up.
And sure enough, just a few minutes later, IFED get their man.
You all right? What we do is we'll move the car, if you can park your van up on the drive, and then what we'll do, we'll get you to open up, we'll go in and we'll explain all.
The cameras remain outside the property.
What I'm going to do now is I'm going to be arresting you on suspicion of fraud by false representation into those claims. All right? So for that, you do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something which you may later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence.
Although it isn't long before the suspect is brought out and taken away for questioning.
He was a bit surprised to see us here, but he's been cooperative, he's been compliant, and he's willing to assist us in our inquiries.
With the formalities out of the way, the search can begin. Almost half an hour later, Andy and the team emerge from the property, having seized a number of documents, mobile phones, and a laptop, which may contain crucial evidence.
Laptop's always handy because computers can be used to alter documentation. Documentation can be scanned into them, you know, or indeed documentation can be created on them. Due to the fact that he has had access to it, this is something that we can take back to London and review at a later date.
For Andy and the team, the work has only just begun. But after a shaky start, things are looking up.
It's been a good day in the fact that what we needed to do today has been achieved. Our objectives have been achieved. Job done.
The suspects were later interviewed under caution, and the case is still under investigation.